Hello networkers, and welcome back to another episode of Ask the Network Engineer, where I will answer one of your questions. And in this episode, we're going to talk about interview type questions. So we're calling this our interview talk segment. So we have our Q&A segments, we're going to have our certification talk segments, and now this is interview segments. Basically questions about how to get through interviews, questions that could be asked, how you should construct your resume. And I have two questions here, which is really great to start off this conversation. And the first question is from Samuel, and he says, he actually presents a scenario. He says, if you want to hire a network engineer and interview them for the job that you want to offer, you have two candidates, I guess. You got Mr. John. He has a CCNP in routing and switching, so he's certified, but he has no experience, no practical experience except for home lab. And candidate number two is Mr. Tom, and he also has his CCNP in routing and switching, so he's certified with about 5 years of work experience. Okay, so what kind of questions would you ask, and what do you expect them to know? Well, first, right off the bat, the phone call, the first person getting that phone call is Mr. Tom, okay, because he's certified and he has experience. But of course, it depends what's on the resume. And I have another question here from Ellison. I think that's kind of like taking wordplay and separating the name. And he says he has a question that he'll be graduating this December. I'm guessing this is last December. And I am already a certified CCNA with routing and switching. I don't have any experience in the Cisco field yet. Can I ask for advice for interviews and possible answers to questions for the interview? Thanks in advance. So let's go ahead and talk about that in this episode. Okay, so when it comes to interviews, understand that there's really two things that we're looking at during that process. The first is understanding your personality, okay? How you are as a person. How do you work on issues? Do you work with other people? Are you a team player? And the other component is with the technology. Your skills, your level of technology based on what we are trying to hire you for, okay? So don't think that you may be a badass in networking. You are a 4-time CCIE, CCDE. Great, I'm hired. No, if your personality is crap, you're not going to get hired. And this actually is important. You really think about that. You have to be a good fit for the company and for the team that you be a part of, especially if it's a medium and larger size company. You'll be working with a team. And from my experience, that has always been a very great experience. I love working with a team, but it depends on hiring the right kind of people for that. Because again, there's different types of people with different personality types. And if it doesn't really mesh right, look, in my lifetime, I have worked with certain network engineers that it just didn't click right. I'm not going to say any by name or which environment that came from, because I don't want those people to kind of figure out that I'm talking about them. But there were a few. I remember I worked in one particular environment and somebody knew a person who was a network engineer and we needed another person. Because typically in most medium, large size environments, you want to have, at least 2 network engineers on staff. Because if I get sick or something happens to me, we need to have another engineer that can take care of the issues that comes up and projects and things like that. So we hired this particular guy, which I was not involved with in the interview process. Okay, this guy just knew this person. And he came in and he had a very different personality. He brought things down on my network. And I say that because I was why are you making these changes without consulting me, which you brought something down? Now I got to go back and fix that. So that was a lot of issues that I had. And eventually he did leave after a year or so. And, I just went up there, shook his hand and said, I wish you the best of luck. But I know that, okay, fine. It wasn't a good fit. And maybe he left because he knew that we just didn't really mesh well for that. And a lot of stuff we did not accomplish successfully because of that. So a personality thing is very, very important. And the main thing to understand about that is just be humble, be open, that you are willing to work with people, that you're going to compromise, that you're not going to be bossy, that you're not going to tell people that they're wrong, that you're not going to do something. You want to be very helpful. You want to be very, basically, you want to collaborate. Collaboration is a very big deal when you talk about IT. Because as a network person, you'll be working with different departments and different people. And if you come off like the asshole, which we can easily determine that during an interview process. And you may say, well, how do I know that? If I ask you a question, it is okay to say, I actually don't know. I look for that. If you cannot say that I don't know, then I do not want you in my department. Now, you can't say that for all questions that I ask, but be humble. You know what you know what you do not know. And then you get to the technology side, okay? And for this is something to definitely keep in mind, and I may have said this already before in a previous episode. But anything you put on your resume, I can ask you any question about that. So you need to be very careful about what technologies, what experience, what concepts that you know about that technology that is on your resume. So you need to make sure that you understand the concepts of the technology. So I ask people very basic concept questions. And from that, I ask easy to harder questions to understand the depth of knowledge that you have of that technology or protocol. I ask you questions about support scenarios like, hey, this is an issue. How do you troubleshoot that? I ask you questions about how do you handle a project? And I care about how you answer that. So people with a lot of experience will provide a very detailed approach for how to do those things, how to troubleshoot, how to do configurations. And for me, it is about how you answer based on the position that you are trying to interview for. But again, make sure that what's on your resume you know very well. And here is a great example of what I have seen when I interviewed this one person. So this one person came in, they were applying for a position as a network engineer. And great, I look at their resume ahead of time. Okay? And I'm looking at it and I'm kind of highlighting all of the technologies that I see on there. And I kind of take note of if certain technologies are mentioned multiple times. Like if someone says, I've done a lot of OSPF and OSPF and OSPF. Okay, so they probably do a lot of OSPF in the environment. Okay. So anyway, I take note of all of that and kind of get prepped up for what kind of questions I'm going to kind of ask them to get an idea of who they really are. Not just personality, but also with the technology side. So this person came in, great, do a little, basic Q&A, chit chat talk. Management already talked to them. So we got the personality and the team working aspect all figured out. Now for the technical side, great. So this is what I asked this for every single interview process, okay? I said, okay, so you have experience in a lot of different technologies and hardware, a lot of great stuff. Tell me in your professional experience, in your opinion, basically, which technology are you very, very strong at? Okay. So this person answered, OSPF. Yes, OSPF. So I said, okay, on a scale through 1 through 10, 1 being basically no experience and 10 being very, very experienced, where would you rate your experience with OSPF, in your opinion? So he said an 8, an 8.5 to a 9, right? So I said, okay, great. So I'm asking you questions now about OSPF. So I'm going to start out simple, and I'll start to get either a little bit tougher or a little bit lower. Okay, I want to see where the level is. When you say that you're an 8.5, that's pretty high. That means you are almost a master in OSPF. Okay, but again, I care about how they answer the question. So I tell this person this scenario. I say, okay, so you have this topology network and you have 3 areas. You have area 0 right here, and connected to that area is area 100, and connected to that is area 200, with the routers basically along the path. Now you realize that there are issues with all the routers in area 200. It just isn't working. How do you troubleshoot that? So he went ahead and he said, well, I would make sure that, he was doing all of that, right? I said, well, tell me your thought process for this. So he didn't really have one. So he said, well, I guess I'll check the configuration. I said, okay, well, what are you checking in the configuration? That sort of thing, right? So he said, okay, so can I write up the configuration on the whiteboard? I said, go for it. So he went ahead and did, like router OSPF 2 networks area 0 or area 200, things like that, right? And I said, yep, that configuration is correct, but it still doesn't work for routers in area 200. So he said nothing else about using various show commands, things like that. But I said, but this is a very basic concept. Routers in area 200 will never work. Okay, what concept is that, and what is required in order for that to actually work? Okay, the point is he did not know. I said, that's fine. I said, it requires what is called a virtual link. Okay, and he never heard that before. He said, I never heard that. And I'm thinking like, okay, that's a very basic concept with OSPF. And sometimes some network engineers do that by accident. It's not a good design practice. You want to have so the rule of thumb for OSPF when it comes to area design, that it requires your backbone area 0. Then you have standard or normal areas that basically connect into the backbone. Okay. If there is a standard area connecting to another standard area, that's not going to work. It requires a virtual link to basically connect those two areas together so that they are attached. Very basic OSPF 101 stuff. So he couldn't answer that. So I said, okay, let's keep it more simplified. Let me kind of get more of an idea about OSPF that he knows about. Okay. So I say, what kind of communication occurs between 2 OSPF routers before they can exchange routing information? Okay. He didn't know that it required hello timers. He didn't know about dead timers if the neighbor is not responding to hello messages. So then the adjacency goes down. So after the interview process, he said, man, that was very, very tough. I guess I don't know a lot about OSPF after all. So I told him, I said, look, being very honest, be honest with me for a second. What is your actual experience with OSPF? He said, not very much. I just, it was an interview process. I was very excited. So I just kind of read on some stuff about OSPF and EIGRP and BGP and frame relay and just put it on my resume. So I told him, I said, okay, well, you can't do that, because if we require somebody to know about OSPF, and we do have that in our environment, and if you bring down a customer's equipment because of that, that could actually impact our department, our capabilities of supporting our customers, because we don't know what we're doing. Okay. And that if you did not know that, you have to communicate that, or even better, don't put that on the resume. Okay. Because it could really backfire on you. So once again, what you put on your resume is very, very important. Okay. Only put things on your resume that you have experience with, or that you know the concepts for. Now, keep in mind that if you have no networking experience and you have a home lab and you say, yeah, put OSPF, BGP, you really can't do that in terms of putting it for job experience. So you can kind of put it for like skills that you may have and hardware skills that you may have, like a different section. But really, I am looking specifically at the kind of projects that you're working on, and then asking questions about how do you troubleshoot? How do you do configurations? How do you do projects? I'm trying to get you to actually think instead of going, I'm not sure. No, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for some kind of a detailed approach of like, look, okay, so this is actually occurring. Okay, well, I first confirm if we have OSPF neighbors established. Okay, so I'll use show commands for that. I'll look at the OSPF database to see what kind of routes and LSAs are being received and learning about the entire topology. Okay, I will potentially run debug commands to see what kind of communication is being exchanged between the OSPF routers, but also understanding the OSPF constants is important. And I know that this requires a virtual link, and that's not really a best practice anyway. So I will do a redesign to make sure that this area 200 connects to area 0 in a more efficient way. I'm just giving you a very quick way of how to answer that question. But I know OSPF. So that means I can put that down in the resume and I can be prepared to answer questions like that. Okay. So go into that mindset when it comes to interviews. Okay. Be prepared with how you answer about your personality, being a team player, but also be prepared to be very careful about how you craft your resume and what you put on it, because people will interview on that, or they could interview you on that. So you want to be fully prepared. In the next episode, which I'm very excited about, we're going to do another one of these interview talk segments. So it'll be interview talk number 2. And in that one, I'm going to show an actual resume that I have. Now, I, of course, cleaned it up and removed the name, the company, things like that. So you don't know who that resume is, because that's personal, private information. And from there, I'm going to kind of show you what I'm looking at and what kind of questions I'm asking based on what we talked about in this episode, and basically how you should answer the question and things like that. So it's going to be a lot of great stuff, but that's going to be the next episode. So keep watching for more details. And we're done with this episode. So if you have any questions about being a network engineer or anything in the networking field, whether it is with basic Q&A that you may have, or questions that you may have, interview type questions, certifications, things like that, post that below in the comments and your question will come up in a future episode on this channel. So thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. That means a whole lot. And support us on routhub.net. And until next time, keep networking.